Hello, this is our Gapminder project by my partner Paul Duffy, and I'm Lee Pratt. Our two variables are income per person and the amount of cell phones per 100 people. For our hypothesis, we came up with that as income per person rises, the number of people with cell phones also increases. This is due to the fact that over time, we can see an increase in technology. Another potential factor for why we believe this is that the more money a person makes, the higher the chances they need to use a cell phone. For example, more business opportunities like calling associates, partners, and other companies. The graph begins in 1965, showing the number of cell phones per 100 people and income per person. You can see that in the first few years, there was no growth in cell phone per person, but the income distributions were changing on the bottom of the graph. It was in 1973 that the cell phone became available, but it was not until 1987 that the graph began showing the positive correlation between the two variables. After 1987, the growth of number of cell phones per 100 people was rapid until the graph finally stops in 2011. And now we're going to change the graph to 1973. And this is because Martin Cooper created the cell phone at this time. And this took place in New York. This is an important note because you can see that the United States is the first to rise in cell phones per person and had one of the highest incomes per person. So even though the cell phone was invented in 1973, the distinct positive correlation doesn't begin to show until later years when the countries with the higher incomes begin to look at cell phones as more of a necessity and luxury to have.
Analyzing the graph in 2011 as a whole, you can clearly see the positive correlation between the two variables. In the bottom left-hand corner, we see countries in Africa, such as Mozambique, Cote d'Ivoire, um, and they're less developed countries with lower income per person, and as a result, they have lower cell phones per 100 people. In the top right corner, we have countries such as Russia, the United States, France, Spain, and these are the developed countries with higher income per person, and as a result, they do have more cell phones per 100 people. And I think this is possible because the higher the income of the worker, the more need for a cell phone they will need for business opportunities such as talking to clients, consulting with coworkers, and such. For this part, we're going to follow the US, Russia, Mozambique, China, and Cuba from the start of 1973 to 2011. We see over time that these countries develop a more positive correlation over time. But we pick these countries because there's different factors in each country that uh, show where it ends up at the end of 2011. As you can see, Russia is rapidly growing in cell phone per 100 people and actually almost gets up to 180 uh, cell phones per 100 people. The US is a little bit lower, but is also showing a lot of positive growth. Mozambique, however, having a lower income per person, does show that they do have lower cell phones per person. Interestingly enough, Cuba, who has a decently high income per person, uh, does not have many cell phones per person. And this is because we think that Cuba has high restrictions with their leadership, which stunted their progression over time with cell phones and technology. So, in conclusion, after analyzing the graph, we conclude that our hypothesis of higher income per person positively correlates with cell phones per 100 people.